do the recording on YouTube, the live stream?
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay.
Tim, you can kick us off.
Hello, everyone. To those who've been joining us for the past 7 sessions, welcome back. If you're joining us for the first time again, welcome to the next architecture of Philanthropy. Yeah, it's been very young and youthful. And so thank you so much for joining us again. My name is Tembegile Masego, and I lead the African Youth Philanthropy Network. This series has not just been a conversation, it's one that's building up to something much bigger, which is a policy brief and an advocacy project on how we build an enabling environment for philanthropy, but more so an effective African philanthropy ecosystem. We're not doing it alone. We partnered with Core Africa, the African Youth Panel, the Africa Evidence Youth League, Ashoka East Africa, Social Change Factory, and the Southern Africa Youth Forum, and all of you in the room. And so thank you so much for joining us. I am not your host today. I would like to then bring our moderator for the day, Tarisai Jangara, who heads the Southern Africa wing of Alliance Magazine, a seasoned journalist and a philanthropy enthusiast who's been getting her hands dirty in the sector and pushing it forward. And so, Tarisai, it's your show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tembi, and good afternoon, everyone. I think as Tembi said, I'm equally feeling sad, but what I'm just excited about is from the session 1, that was this first series, to where we are today. We have been building a house. I think we now have the windows, the floor has been put, the walls are up. Do we have a roof? I think that's what we'll discuss in today's session, and we'll just think about what we want to put inside this house, what kind of furniture we would put in this house. So I'm really honored to be moderating this final session, the next architecture of philanthropy, which we'll be discussing today. So just a few ground rules. As you are joining, please drop your name in the chat so that we know who is joining us in this room this afternoon. And also just keep your microphones muted so that we can have a more engaging conversation. If you have questions or reflections, can you drop them in the chat, and we'll be able to recognize them and share as we go. But also, please don't really leave without telling us where you're tuning in from, your name and your organization, so that this interaction does not end today. So what I'm really excited about is that when we talk about the architecture of philanthropy, based on everything that have been said in the past series, we are talking more than organizations or funding. We are looking at the entire ecosystem, and I'm really excited that today we have speakers who are also just representing the entire ecosystem, and we'll be introducing them as they come on board. But just to kick us off, before I go any further, you know that the next architecture, that's what I believe, it has a sound and it has a shape. And I think this is what we should hear before we name it anything. And we have Banshi, who is going to be giving us a curated spoken piece. Banshi, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Banshi. I am a spoken word and hip hop artist from Zimbabwe. I'm also a cultural curator, and my heart is embedded in the nature of us being Africans. And the piece that I'm going to be sharing with you today is called I Think in Color, and it speaks to everything that has culminated to today. Even though I wasn't present from the first day, I heavily feel included, and I hope this piece also speaks to you. So here goes. I think in color. So when you ask me to spew in cursive on a bright white page with colorblind print, I sink to the bottom of the same ocean my ancestors drowned in. You tell me to articulate. To articulate before it's too late, before the deadline hits, the same way my trauma sits in the pit of my stomach in place of a meal. I could have healed. I could have brought healing to these wounds, but these wounds that I bear do not have medicine that is found there on shelves like files and facts. In fact, my kind of medicine cannot be defined. It cannot be translated. It can only be felt. It is experience. It is the rhythm of resilience, a color. I write in color. So if you ask me to justify it, to make it bold and bulleted, it feels like I am being blamed for existing double-spaced. Times New Roman, expecting me to measure my people's survival in metrics and margins that fit your quarterly reviews, as if the rhythm in my resilience is not also rhythm and blues. Tell me, what is a policy brief to the breath we have held in our lungs for so long? The life that has been held in our lungs for so long, how we exhale in oral tradition and build in less than blueprints. What is food for thought to an uncooked meal? You see, it kind of feels like grant or no grant, we have been taken for granted, made to feel like we are more problem than we are solution. But enough is enough. You see, help is not help if it begins to feel forced. Help is not help if it begins to force. I feel in color. So could you feel it too? Banshee. Thank you so much.
Oh my word. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Banji. I think this is the sound that we really wanted to hear. And I know that we have Antonio Bueme, who is going to be provoking us today. But I think we have already started on that note where I'm beginning to think, what is our collective diagnosis of the current philanthropy architecture in Africa? The discussion is just continued and gotten into the rhythm of that very beautiful and curated poet, where you have questioning a lot of things from the log frames that are used within organizations, measuring what matters, are they even applicable for communities, for organizations? Can we now then define our own development? What then does that look like in practice? Thank you so much again, Banshi. I hope you'll be able to give us another closing piece. I feel like you left me really wanting more, and I'm sure more participants on the call can also just agree with me. If you are just joining us, this has been an 8-part series, and today we are focusing on the final series describing the next architecture of philanthropy and being led by the youth that are interested in philanthropy within the philanthropy and development sector. And I'm thinking of how we are going to be provoked, where we are going to sort of get a foresight in terms of where are we going, how do we get there, what is it that we refuse to carry forward. If you are to take a paper and just sketch the next 10 years in terms of what the next architecture of philanthropy looks like, what would your sketch look like? So to just provoke us and to move forward with the conversation, I would now want to call upon my colleague and friend, Antonio Bueme. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Teresa, and much appreciation to Banshi. Kudos to you. That was a beautiful poem. So I want to do this in less than 10 minutes, so that I could hear your thoughts or invite the rest of the team to share their thoughts around this. And I want to start from, the time that Tembi shared the vision she had about, this series. Special thanks to you, Tembi, and the team at AYPN. I think when you shared this, one of the things that came to mind, I think, in our first conversation was the desire to reimagine philanthropy across the continent, African philanthropy in particular, and trying to see, what a good fit for the participation, the active participation of not only youth, but the broader, sector of practitioners would look like. So I think we've done a good job at that. So kudos to you once again. As I read through, the concept note at the start, I envisioned that this series had, something very important. Not only were we looking at, what is, we were thinking around what could be. And Dr. Tendai Murisa did a very good job. I don't know if he's on call or if he will, listen to this. I really appreciated, the first session where he pointed to, what has been, what could be, and, the challenge more so to organizations led by youth. And I felt that as he spoke, I thought, Tembi and the team at AYPN are positioned as, captains on this journey of reimagining what philanthropy would look like. So I want to offer, 4 provocations for us this evening. And I definitely open us up to thinking with me around what the next architecture of philanthropy could look like. The first is, we ought to appreciate what is, while confronting what must be. And I think as, I look through those that are present here, many of us, have been part of, this space for a while, and we must give, a thumbs up to what has been. Maybe not everything, but a few things that may not have gone well should also be pointed out very strongly. And of course, it's not a conversation with me unless there's an African proverb. So one that I was thinking of as I thought through this specific point is flows, it never forgets its source. So, this proverb is definitely essential. And I know many of us could have read of it or used it in terms of, appreciating history, because we know that history is not a cage, but is a compass for us. It will direct us in where we need to go. But we also must appreciate that we must not be bound by this very history. So as much as we appreciate it, we must be bold enough to tell ourselves, this is not a binding factor. And to do this, we must honestly reflect. We begin at a place of reflection. And another proverb that came to mind is, it's only a foolish child who sees his mother at an old age and asks himself what the father was thinking when he made that decision. So we will not be foolish children who look at what has been done and then begin to ask, what are the choices that these people made. So of course we appreciate those that have gone before us and the decades of work that have been put in. Be bold enough to resist the temptation of dismissing the opportunity and the potential that lies with us. So the question that I posed to us, and I know Tembi knows that I had a lot of fire to spit, but I've tried to cool this off to ensure that it makes sense to us. And the question that I would want to pose to us is, what is it that we appreciate? What is it that we appreciate in what exists, and what is it that we would boldly want to confront? So feel free to drop those in the chat even as I speak, your thoughts, for those that have been in the space, and for those that may be new to this space, what do you think work for philanthropy across the continent? What do you think would work for African philanthropy in particular? The second, point I want to put across is, the power of meaning and why definitions matter. In a piece that Dr. Morisa put together, I'm a student of philanthropy, so I'm reading a lot, and I continue to read, and I invite all of us to. I'll be sharing some of these links after. Kicking Away the Scaffolding is a piece by Dr. Tendai that he did in February 2025. And if you have a quick link, please do look it up and share. But if you don't, I will share that after. we notice that, philanthropy and African philanthropy, loses a lot in the endless definitions that, we try to coin. I think for a long time, everyone starts with, the Greek translation of the word love for humanity. But then after that, it gets lost in, do we love the humans that have the money? Do we, love the humans that exist in our community? Do we, think about local giving? Do we think about institutional and corporate giving? So I think the definition, though broad, kind of gets lost along the way. And so I think, we need to appreciate if I look at the future of the space, there has to be an appreciation of these definitions. And if we can't define philanthropy or African philanthropy holistically, or have something we can, point to as a whole, then other things within philanthropy also then begin to, take their own shape. When someone says enabling environment for philanthropy, then, everyone defines it as they can, and everyone defines it what they may, and then we lose a lot in that. And I don't think, definitions are neutral. I believe that definitions shape, a lot. They shape who belongs, they shape what counts, and for the case of, philanthropy in terms of the financial flows, they also shape where the resources flow. So I don't think, maintaining an ambiguous definition helps us. So there has to be a lot for us to think about, if philanthropy is going to be defined more narrowly, or are we going to broaden it, or what do we think are those key things that we ought to look at? If you quickly think about it from the African perspective, if you think, how do we involve everyday giving? How do we involve solidarity? How do we think about systems of mutual aid? So there's a lot in definitions, and many of you are in the space know that, beyond enabling environment, we talk about systems change. What do we mean by that? If you asked, the 21 of us on the call, we'll probably, have different people, but I see essays on the call. So people like essay who are, taking the lead in things like system change, or to, think with, the team at AYP. And so that as we conclude this series, maybe we also need to put out more strongly a call around what this is. Of course, another African fable this time that we always think about is, there's a reference to this broke relative who always, shows up to family meetings. And whenever they raise their hand to give an opinion, everyone shuns it because of, the fact that they are broke. And I know that if you quickly think about the last family meeting you are in, if you are the broke relative, and in this case, doesn't mean you have nothing. It just means that of those present, you are the one with least standing. It positions you at a place where you don't have much to contribute because everyone thinks you ought to be the one serving the meal. And when we think about some of these definitions and how we position ourselves, we need to position ourselves more strongly and not see ourselves as the broke relative who has to be in the meeting but only serve the food and not have anything vital to contribute. So if we're to build a new architecture, we must root our definitions in our realities, in our values, in our practices, and not just those things that are, imported, the imported frameworks. Thirdly, and I hope I'm managing time, Teresa, you let me know. I had mentioned four, so I'm at the third. The last is thinkers and doers, and why action must lead. For those that, have been in the space for a minute, that there's a big appreciation to thinkers, of course, the researchers, analysts, strategists, and we have them, on this call. And this, this series is proof of the fact that, thought leadership is very important. And again, once more, appreciation to the team that put this together. But we also must confront attention that exists, We can think endlessly about what is wrong, We can write endlessly about what needs to change. And I think that's the dilemma at which we are, So if we have so many people thinking in the same direction and thinking about something that may appear too comfortable for us at this time, but is in the wrong direction, I think we need to challenge ourselves to pause at where we're thinking. And then for a new architecture, what I piece together here is, for transformation to be done, we need to experiment more. There have to be better models that we are building, and we need to try some of these. And this is what I was telling Tembi. We need to challenge funding and how it is happening, and know that this is very important. Again, referring to the broke relative that I had mentioned earlier. Whoever is funding the work that is happening across the continent decides a lot that happens. And then we need to understand more around what shifting power is, and actually see what we ought to contribute to that beyond just describing it. Because one thing that we'll quickly see is these things talked about and written only go so far. So when we talk about an architecture, it's a practical thing. It's something that we need to prepare ourselves to get into. And again, another proverb for you, if you're preparing to make a sculpture, or if you desire to make a sculpture, you need to be ready for your hands to get dirty. So that's something that we need to think about. And then lastly, I thought about philanthropy as architecture. What does it mean to design for the future? So if we think of philanthropy as architecture, then we must ask ourselves, what principles guide our design? What principles are going to guide us as we design this? And Tembi, this is a strong one to you as we think forward. And I wanted to offer only two principles that I think we could look at. The first is form follows function, and form is FORM. Forgive my pronunciation if it doesn't resonate, but form follows function. So in architecture, and I had to consult a few architects that I know, in architecture, you need to begin with something that is beyond what looks impressive. You need to begin with what serves a specific purpose. And in this case, what serves people, should apply to philanthropy. If the function is community transformation, then the form should be something like institutions, funding models, or governance structures, and these must serve that function. So that's one of the principles we need to look at. The second is, foundations determine everything. So a building is only strong as what it stands on. If the foundation is external dependency, the system will always lean outward. Will always go back. And we were making a joke earlier before this call is, after a call like this and after a conversation like this, most of us have to go back and write a proposal to that which is external. And I don't think that is something that looks into the new architecture of philanthropy. So if the foundation is inequity, the system reproduces iniquity. So we need to look at that. But then if we see that the foundation is community, and for those that have worked with communities, and the communities are not just geographic. When we think of communities, we shouldn't think about them as geographic. This in itself is a community. We need to think about communities of practice. We need to think about communities of thinkers and doers. We need to think about communities beyond what would be a community in Kampala, a community in Zambia or Zimbabwe. So we need to broaden our understanding of what community is. So the real work is not just in designing new structures. It is in rebuilding and understanding if the foundation upon which we build can support that which we intend to build. So as I close, those are four thoughts, but as I close, I want to definitely appreciate AYPN and all the partners that have put this series together and are thinking around what the future of philanthropy in Africa is. And I just put a quote here that the future of philanthropy in Africa will not be inherited. It must be constructed. And it can only be done by those that are willing to question definitions, those that are willing to act and not just analyze, by those that are willing to design differently. So the question I want to leave with us, I know I've left so many questions, but the final one that I want to leave with us is, what are we willing to build next? And what are we willing to dismantle to make that possible? Because architecture is not just about adding, sometimes it's about removing what no longer serves. And that is the work ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonio, for that powerful provocation. And it has really left me wondering, am I the poor relative who is on this call today? Or I'm one of the rich cousins? I'm not sure. But what is clear is that what is strongly coming from you is that philanthropy has never been really about the sector. It's really about identity, ownership, meaning, and imagining what is possible. And you really spoke about appreciating what already exists while appreciating and confronting what must change. I think that is a powerful place to begin, because building the next architecture definitely does not mean dismissing the work that has been done, the sacrifices that has been put forward, and the institutions that have brought us here to be able to provide the space for even us to talk about the next architecture of philanthropy. And it also means asking more questions. What do we then carry forward? What do we transform? And what do we create anew, is reflected in your conversation. I think it is a good point for me to now bring our speakers, Cecilia, Munashe, Banshi. She has already given us a beautiful poem, but she will also help us just to reflect on what the architecture will look like, because we'll definitely need those rhymes, the rhythm, what was coming out when she was delivering her poem. And we also have Seko and Yamishen. I think these are some of the names that I've just been trying to pronounce throughout the day. But I would allow our speakers just to briefly introduce themselves. But whilst they are doing that, can you then just tell us, when you look at philanthropy in Africa today, what is the greatest strength that we should think of carrying into the next architecture that we are talking about? Today is not the place to be talking about problems, challenges, all those were surfaced in the previous conversations that have brought us to the Part 8 series. So may you kindly introduce yourself and just reflect on the question, when you look at philanthropy in Africa today, what is its greatest strength that we can really carry forward and use as we build the next architecture of philanthropy? So we can have Munashe, may you please just come on camera, introduce yourself and respond to the question. Tembi, did Munashe join?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. Seho, you can kick us off.
All right. Thank you so much for the wonderful invitation. I am Chirofa Jamalohodi, and the direct translation of my name, it means blessing. I am a representative of Southern Africa Youth Forum, abbreviated as SAYOF. This is an organization that encourages young people like myself to be centered at a place whereby we are able to share our thoughts and, where possible, influence policies to the betterment of our people. The question that you have posed in terms of what can we do to strengthen, or the strength that we can carry forward in philanthropy in Africa, I would say we need to work more together rather than doing work on silos. So Africa is big on its own, and it's a beautiful continent with its own rich history. Looking at the history a bit, most of African countries were colonized, and even today we're still dealing with those systematic issues. So what we can get to do to work together, redefine the future that we all want, and to be secured for the next generation, because the future, it is for the next generation. What we do today here, it's a building stone of what the other generation can come and build on and leverage on, so that the others can also flourish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seko. I've taken that key point of strength as a relationship, of collaboration as a key strength that we can carry forward as we are building the next architecture. So Tembi, make sure that you are definitely throwing in the aspect of collaboration, which is very important. Cecilia?
Thank you, Tarisai, for having me. I am Cecilia Siovose Monyoli. I love the name Siovose because it reminds me of my roots and it grounds me. I currently serve as the Safeguarding and Gender Lead for Trust Africa, and more specifically for the African Youth Panel. My work, again, focuses around ensuring that young people, particularly women and individuals from vulnerable communities, can engage safely in the different activities and programs that are running. It also makes sure that they are also engaging meaningfully, and also there's some equitability within the programs, and then making sure that they have, and we're creating decision-making spaces for them. So, I mean, one of the things that has really stood out when Boeme was speaking about it, and I know he talked about form follows function. And for me, even when he was talking about it, I looked at something that was wobbly. And if you don't create a form for a structure, if it is not well done, and he also talked about making sure the foundation is strong enough to hold the building. So if we're not if we don't make sure that that form has been created, then how do we measure, and how do we make sure that whatever we were creating is functional for the different people that we work with? One thing that I think we can carry forward is a commitment to accountability, even when the function is not coming out, and when the form has cracks, and when it's not working. Are we making sure that we are holding ourselves accountable? Are we making sure that we are accountable to the people who actually we are working with, the communities that we work with, the communities that we engage, the young people that we engage? Are we making sure that we are accountable to them, and not just accountable to where we look up to in terms of money, and who brings in the money, who brings in the structure, who brings in the organization? Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, and for just prompting us and reminding us that accountability is a key ingredient. Not sure if we can start debating along the lines whether it's already a key strength within the philanthropy sector or development sector that we can carry forward, but what is clear is that accountability is needed. Can I just call in Banshi? You have an opportunity to reintroduce yourself properly and just respond to the question that I've posed.
All right. Hello once again, everybody. My name is Banshi. Birth certificate name is Tatiana Natalie Kondo. I am a spoken word and hip hop artist, as well as a cultural curator, which means I build on the foundation of the themes that I am most passionate about. And these include the Pan-African nature, womanism, and also gender equality and mental health. So I create systems in place for youth to exist and share their creative ability so that they can contribute to the change that we want to see. So to address the question at hand, I think one strength that we can carry into the future would be the fact that we already have a spirit of Ubuntu, like a communal understanding of what it means to give and to receive. So that means we don't need an external blueprint to see or rather measure the progress that we already make within our African philanthropic networks. So what we already possess is that ability to integrate ourselves in other people's existences. And this solidifies how we're able to give and receive aid externally. So we need to be looking inside and preserving that ability to look inside our community so that we can also feed into our futures. So retaining that spirit of Ubuntu, the foundation of love, is very important, because it makes the work that we do feel less like work, less like duty, and more of an act of service, which is, to me, a love language. And Ubuntu is a communal love language that we strongly need to make sure it exists, even when we continue to solidify our existing frameworks. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Panshi. I knew that bringing you again to reintroduce yourself would be beneficial. Now I know that there is another name that we didn't know.
Thank you so much.
But thank you so much for really speaking about Africa. The fact that we already have a rich tradition of solidarity, mutual aid that comes through the spirit of Ubuntu. It's a key ingredient and a key strength that we are definitely going to be throwing into our architecture, and also just a key foundation that will really support our building to ensure that it's not shaky. It is indeed the spirit of Ubuntu. Yami Shen, I would call you upon now. Forgive me for butchering your name. But I'll hand over to you so that you can introduce yourself and just reflect on the greatest strength that philanthropy in Africa today carry, and we can really utilize in building the next architecture. Tembi, am I missing someone?
Yimeshkan is in the room.
Yimeshkan, if you can hear me, may you kindly introduce yourself and just respond to the question where you identify a key strength that we can carry forward in building the next architecture.
Thank you so much, Teresa, if I pronounce it well.
Tarisai.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go
Tarisai,
ahead.
okay. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Yimeshkan Tarakany, and I'm from Ethiopia. And by background, I'm a vet and medical public health. So currently, I'm working on the Blue Vet. It's a youth-led initiative. Mission is to empower the youth in transforming Ethiopia's livestock sector through advocacy and community engagement, recognizing the Ethiopia's enormous livestock wealth. So, as many of you know, the largest herd on the continent remain utilized as the driver of youth employment and also entrepreneurship. So through consulting, training, and targeted advocacy, we work to position Ethiopia's livestock and the agribusiness sector as a viable, modern, and also high potential career pathway for the younger Ethiopian. So when I come to the question, I believe, or we believe, the diagnosis, if it is the first question, right, I am addressing, we believe we need to look inside what we have, as an African youth, and also as a country, not only as a youth, but as a country, what our country have, what is really the potential. And the other must be, we need to own, the challenge, the challenge that we want to address when it comes to the current philanthropic architecture in Africa. The other thing is, it was mentioned by the previous speakers, we need to transition from aid to investment. We have been waiting, kind of support, funding, whatever the name, but we were looking outside, we're not looking inside what, people can do, what we Africans can do. Instead of looking outside, we need to look for inside, because the global funding tell us there are so many challenges when it comes to funding, not only for the youth, but also for the bigger. So we need to look for that. And one of the things that I want to raise on this discussion is, we need to start the public-private or others, they say, people-private partnership. I believe the real solutions when it comes to Africa's challenge is looking for funding. So we need to start looking for creating partnership between the private sector.
Yamiscan, I think we are losing you. On that note, where you are talking about how we can leverage on the private sector. Are you back?
Yes, okay. Sorry if you are not hearing. Yeah, I can mention, here in Ethiopia, there is, on my sector, there is an initiative called a Bounty of Basket. It's a government initiative, actually. But the way the government is implementing, actually, the idea is in order boosting Ethiopia's livestock production. So the way the government is doing this initiative is attracting so many private sectors to engage in, to invest on, whatever the sector they're interested on, whether it could be poultry production, dairy production. Of course, there are so many international development actors who are supporting the initiative, but majorly the government is trying to bring local actors, Ethiopian investors, so that they can engage and support the country. Thereby, we can have our own way of funding the cause. So this could be one of the examples of public-private partnership, instead of looking for outside. So we can, if we believe in our, potential, what are the richest person, what are the companies who can contribute, not as a sake of, not only for the corporate social responsibility, but as a genuine investment, as a genuine contribution to the challenge that we are facing in the global architecture of philanthropy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing those beautiful examples around leveraging on the private sector. But most importantly, I think it's the reminder that charity begins at home. Whatever resources that we are looking for, we are supposed to tap from within. And I think the four of you have really done a great job in terms of really sharing and giving us a shape of what the foundation of our building would look like if we're talking about the next architecture. And what I'm really hearing from this is that the future of African philanthropy is not something that really needs to be imported, but we can already use the strengths that are deeply rooted within our communities and our continent. I think the key thing was around collaboration, moving away from working in isolation, the fragmentation, working in silos, but really recognizing the scale of our unique collectiveness, what really happens, what moves when we work together. And also the aspect around accountability, to really focus on accountability. And I think this really applies on not only accountability to funders, institutions, but accountability to the communities and people we seek to serve or we are already serving. In the spirit of Ubuntu, the understanding that giving, receiving, and caring for one another, it has always been part of our social fabric, something that we really experience in our day-to-day living. And I think this really connects us back to the area reflections that were shared by Antonio about definitions, what counts as philanthropy. Perhaps part of building the next architecture is really recognizing all these forms of solidarity, mutual support, and community action, and beginning to share examples. We have someone from Ethiopia, South Africa, from Zimbabwe, just to see what does that look, what do they look like in practice? What do you call them? Because we're talking about philanthropy today, but I know that in some spaces it is named differently. But just to move forward, since we are surrounded by young people as speakers today, I just want to focus on this key question. So young people, they are often described as beneficiaries, but when we are thinking and imagining the next architecture of philanthropy, what would a philanthropic ecosystem designed by young Africans look like? Because the conversations that I had in the previous series, running from the first one to the seventh one, it is the disgruntlement around intergeneration engagement and the focus that we are not really doing development differently because we have inherited the same architecture that is not working for us, that comes with a lot of prescription. And now the new generation is saying there's something different that they can offer. So as we are on this call, I think it is really great to just give a brief reflection in terms of, from a young person's perspective, what would a philanthropic ecosystem designed by young Africans look like? What is it you're hoping to see? I would call upon Cecilia. You can kick us off.
Thank you, Tarisai. So I think when you look at the young people, and I have been privileged to work a lot with them, me being one of them, but when you look at the current architecture, the way it is, we bring in young people for consultation and we listen. But what we do not do is, once you hear, you do not let them be the ones who actually tell you about their priorities. Still stay in the conversation to be able to make the decisions, to be able to actually have the power to make that decision. So when I look at what that architecture then would look like, is having a space where young people are invited, yes, for consultations, are invited to different activities, to different advisory structures. However, they're also given a space to influence what the funding priorities are, what that money is going to be used for. It will also be a place where young people are also given access to governance structures and be the ones who actually call out where structures are failing, or to be the ones to provide solutions for different structural changes and different governance structures. And then also in terms of the resource allocation, be the ones who speak up in terms of where the resources are allocated. And one of the things I want to speak, I want to give an example of what we're doing in the African Youth Panel that has actually enabled this thing. We've seen young people come in, and one of them is we were thinking about rolling out a training program for about 6 months for young people. And one of the things we did was we actually got practitioners who were in the space of training. We were bringing in the donor, we were bringing in different institutions, but we kept asking ourselves, if we're going to train young people, and this is what we want them to achieve at the end of the day, why are they not in the room being the ones to tell us what it is their needs are? Why are they not in the room to tell us how long this training they will need it for? And also, why are we not letting them be here to tell us about their financial needs as well? And when we brought them in, we actually saw a shift in terms of, okay, so this was the line we were actually heading to. This is what we wanted. We wanted to do this in 3 months. But the young people are saying, we might want to do it in 3 months, but we're not able to actually achieve what we want because we have these barriers that we have constantly had. And if you don't look at it quite specifically, then we're not able to achieve what we want in the 3 months. And we saw that shift, and it actually helped us to navigate through it. So for me, that architecture is making sure that we're not just looking at money. We're not just looking at where we getting support, who are we partnering with? It's, are we actually able to, do we have the power to make the decision around that money that is going to come? Do we have the power to actually define what our structures are going to be? Do we have the power to make sure that we direct what our priorities are and what our exact needs are?
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I think it's the easier pronunciation. I know we want your African name, but I'll use this one. So you are really stressing on the aspect of power, and I really appreciate your thoughts around the youth being not only being consulted, but ensuring that even in decision making, they're also involved, like the full cycle of development. But when you stress about the aspect of power, who is supposed to give you this power? How is it supposed to be handed over to the youth? Because it's a gap, it's a complaint that we keep hearing within the sector. But as we seek to build a new architecture, I think it will be important if we can provide clarity so that we know how then we can engage the youth better.
All right, thanks, Teresa, for bringing that up. So when we speak about, power is not, it's not a fruit on a tree where you just go and pluck it and you suddenly have the power. One of the things I've also learned over time working with young people, it's when they get into the room, and I'm so sorry to use this word again, their power dynamics. And sometimes it's because of their age, it's because of the different statures, it's because of different educational levels. And so you start to realize, oh, okay, so this person has is older, so they look like they would know what to talk about. And so you get in and you feel, oh, okay, maybe I don't have the experience. Maybe I haven't lived enough to understand it. But when you start to actually accept that you have had the experience for whatever number of years, it's still an experience, right? You have had the opportunity to listen to different people. And when you start to speak from that sense, you realize, oh, I'm actually bringing the power back to me. Nobody handed it to me. Nobody said, okay, Cecilia, here's your space to speak. Nobody. But that's one way of actually getting power. It's understanding that you actually have a skill. You have the understanding. You have the experience. No matter how small or how short it feels to you, you have it. So speak about it and speak about it with strength and confidence. So that way you start building the power within you. The other way around power is there's an environment that has also been created by the people within the room and the space that has been given to the person so that they're able to speak. So that again is another form of power that is extended to people. So while I keep speaking about power, it's not something that somebody hands it to you, but there's a space that is created that tells you, okay, you can be able to do this. In that way, then you have the power to actually speak about something. Then somebody also creates policies that allow for whatever you say to be considered when policy is being created. So creating an environment that allows you to speak, allows you to be heard, allows for whatever you speak about to be incorporated in the different places. That is what power to me looks like. And again, I emphasize it's not a tree with a fruit, and the fruit is power, and you go and pluck it. You have to fight. You have sometimes fight for it. Sometimes you have to fight within yourself so that it can come out. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. So I think the key thing here is the philanthropic ecosystem designed by the young Africans would be the one where they have the full decision-making power and the engagement that is done within the philanthropy sector or the ecosystem is a full cycle. It goes beyond just consulting you as young people. Thank you so much for that. I think I would really bring in Banshi just to hear your reflections on this. What would that ecosystem designed by young Africans look like?
All right, so I will start off by hammering in the point that I completely support what was said before, that young African leaders need to be in the forefront of the decision-making process, but also aid should stop looking like, what can I call it? It should stop looking like tokenism and more of self-sustenance. It shouldn't look like we're being given parts of a very small fish to feed on. It should look like we're being empowered to actually contribute to how the entire aquarium is being shaped. So that means not only sitting at the table, but also defining and designing it, implementing it in a way that speaks to the diversity or the yes, the diversity of the communities that we come from and exist in. And also coming from an artist perspective, I think the heart of a project should not be what is written on paper or how clean it looks. Rather, it should look to the importance of the translation that comes with the art that embodies the entirety of what we'll be trying to achieve. Because art has this thing of being able to give soul to a situation. So that means it's not supposed to always be fitting on the tongue. It should look, it should be translated in a way that everyone can contribute. So I believe that policymakers should see the importance of incorporating or rather investing, because aid shouldn't look like just a beneficiary receiving, but it should look like investment. So when we do get aid, it should go in a way that flows and comes back to us rather than we are constantly asking or begging or being that broke relative that was spoken of earlier. So essentially what I'm trying to say is we need to recognize the importance of involving young people in the decision-making process, to redefine what aid looks like so that it doesn't look like tokenism, it looks like more of investment. And also that the art space, the creative sector, the civic space should be heavily invested in, because they know how to translate what is tangible into what is intangible and long-lasting. So yeah, essentially that is what I believe needs to be done and what I believe the young people can contribute. Because I've been in so many conversations with young people who even come from the grassroots or those that are coming from high density suburbs, and they may not be I don't know, fitting to the boardrooms, but they have this ability to mobilize. They have an innate leadership quality that we cannot find in the West, that is purely African. And recognizing the importance of those people that might not necessarily be the thinkers, that are action-led, like what was said in the beginning, that not everyone is a thinker. Some people are operating from a place of action. But I think like the art sector has this ability of allowing young people to shapeshift. So for instance, I am a thinker, but I'm also a person who acts as well. So I am contributing actively to the change that I want to see. And most of the young people that I've encountered who are in the creative sector have this unique ability to be able to shapeshift. And I believe that is purely African. We don't wait for situations to be perfect for us to act, or for situations to be perfect for us to actually innovate. It is a very African thing to do, to just make ends meet with what we already have. And I believe that that's something that we really need to take into account, not waiting for things to be perfect, but using the resources that we already have, the qualities that we already possess, to make sure that we preserve what we've already had from the beginning and not look outward, essentially. So, yes.
Thank you so much, Banshi. I think you have added another important layer around moving from a relationship of dependence towards that of investment, where communities and young people are not only seen as recipients, but as contributors and designers and builders of their own development. But still there, Banshi, you spoke about the innovations that young people can really do to promote development within their own spaces of operating. I think that was your point of ending. And I was wondering if you have a specific example of what is happening in your context. What is it you are doing as young people to promote the spirit of philanthropy, so that we can just help us to have a picture, so that when we're talking about what this philanthropic ecosystem designed by young people would look like, we already have a practical example that we can write on or think of.
All right. So personally, I spearhead a movement called She. So essentially what we do is we bring young people together so that they can use their creative abilities to communicate their lived experience. So like I said prior in my submission, sometimes these young people are not coming from the best situations. They are not the most like intellectual, but they have an innate quality to mobilize and speak to the heart of a matter that we cannot find on a policy brief, that we cannot find in those clean boardrooms. So kind of tipping the leadership pyramid so it looks like it's incorporating everyone, like everyone is being an essential part of the leadership or the change that we want to see. And if you want to look at like art from a global perspective, even the West is looking to Africa right now in the time that we are in. The music is sounding more African, the fashion is sounding more African. Even the way that we do philanthropy should shapeshift, so it looks more African. It shouldn't even look like they're influencing our aid, but we're also influencing how they. So essentially what I'm speaking to is just tipping the scale rather than looking outwards or looking towards what we see or what we perceive to be more clean in this ecosystem that we're trying to create essentially. So yeah, I think for my own personal experience, I've managed to change who I am from just being a performer to also creating opportunities for other young people to exist and perform and share their perspective and also contribute to the change. So I think also realizing that it's important to invest in young leaders, young African leaders who are making sure that that level of translation is made possible is important, even if it doesn't look very clean, essentially.
Thank you very much. We'll take note of the key investments that needs to be done to support young people. I think it's a continued and ongoing process, because I know that there are different initiatives within the philanthropy sector that are clearly targeted at just supporting the young people. I think I'll call upon Yamishan. Yemishan. If Munasho you're on the call, please go ahead. If not, Shego, I'll hand over to you. Shego.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'll just add on to say mentorship is also needed. So mentorship in a term of when intergenerational working environment takes place, we as young people, when we are given that opportunity, we should be able to have a teachable spirit. For instance, I'm going to make an example about Namibia. I love how they do their things. It's something that I got to discover along the way in terms of balancing gender. So what they do is that if a male figure is a chairman, they therefore need a female figure as a deputy chair. So in this case, what we can get to do or reshape is that, I'll give example in politics, is that if we have a Minister of International Affairs as a male figure that is an ultra experienced person, we can therefore in the same right ask for a deputy in that portfolio to be a young person, and to also balance the gender. It depends if this individual person that is a chairman or that is a minister in that portfolio, it's a male figure, we can therefore have a female figure, and we can do this vice versa with other portfolios. This will help us to actually not only dismantle one thing, but to architect on gender equality and ensuring that young people are empowered. And usually when we say young people should be given a table or a seat of influence or decision making, we're not asking it, we're not saying this as a way of we pleading, just get a young person randomly. We are saying young people are here, the ones that are teachable, the ones that are qualified, the ones that are well-deserving, regardless of cadre deployment, they should be given a seat. So this also, this intergenerational working group and inclusivity through mentorship as well, it helps so much. I believe in passing the baton, and also making a succession plan that works. So usually other organizations, when they draft the succession plans, it can take a period of 6 months. But then now, when we have this conversation, we get to have, ask our people to say, look, this is what we have discovered, that we need intergenerational working group and to be carried out. So let's say now, if somebody in that portfolio has got a long term of 5 years to serve, and then they have this young person that is a deputy for 5 years to serve, that on its own, it creates a healthy working environment of intergenerational leadership, as well as the succession plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much on that keynote of really focusing on mentorship and the assertion that, what, the youth are not just coming empty-handed, they're also skilled and they deserve to be occupying certain seats. So I think it's a key thing that should be recognized as we build the next architecture, because that architecture is not just going to build itself, it needs people. I think there was a post on the chat where Antonio was just making reference that if we look at young people today, they're also going to be older and they're going to be occupying some of the bigger roles that exist today. And Yolisa, I think I'm picking this from the chat, she's just stressing that I also think in truly building the house, we should integrate arts and theater in not telling the story, but advocating for the mobilization of African resources for quality well-being, African giving for Africans. It can no longer be on the sidelines. Thank you so much, Yolisa. And I think, Banshi, this is exactly what you're doing in area of interest. So it's a point that you can also just pick up, and Tembi and the group will ensure that the story is not just being told, but there's a key role that is being played by young people in terms of mobilizing resources locally. So just to move forward, what is the one action, I think what are the 2 actions that have to happen within the next 2 years for us to move closer to the vision of having this picture that you are all talking about? What is it? What's one action that has to be done? You can look at it from the perspective of government, funders, and the sector itself. What is that 1 or 2 action that have to definitely happen within the next 2 years? Because we do not want to come back here and still have this same discussion. We have diorganized, we have imagined, and we have discussed the most difficult parts. But how then do we make this happen? I know then, Tembi, when they begin to put all this information together, they also have clear timelines, the key actors involved, the key actions that can be taken by their institution. But what concrete actions, in your views, should foundations, policymakers, networks take to make this shift real? Cecilia?
So I think for one, because I really talked about power and the sharing of it, not just opportunities. I mean, for me, it would look like platforms where one, communities actually have the opportunity to influence decisions. So the decisions that are made, you can actually see that this was a decision that the community, in junction with where the funds or the sources or the resources are coming from, they do the decision making together, and they give priority to the community because they are the ones living, experiencing life as it is in that context. I know you said one, but I want to talk about this in terms of young people. Also, just making sure that young people, instead of just I'm looking for the right word, instead of just inviting young people to different activities or short-term cycle opportunities, enabling them and giving them enough so that there's a long-term sustainability of whatever is happening. So, I mean, you're not just invited to go for a conference. You're not just invited to go for an activity. You're invited to go for the conference. You're also told to sit through another 1 week of workshopping, whatever it is. And then you're invited again for a 3-month stress testing kind of activity, put them in the long-term cycle of things as opposed to just inviting them to short-term activities and conferences that really they're there, they learn a bit and then they go back home. They never make choices about some of the things they talk about. They never get to actually understand what are the policies around the different areas. And sometimes they do know the policies, but again, the opportunity for them to make changes or speak up, the opportunities are not also extended to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Banshi, over to you. Banshi, are you still with us? Just to give us 2 concrete actions.
Okay, so I believe that we need to effect our own blueprints to make sure that the architecture that we are putting in place truly serves us. So that means, like I've been saying constantly since the beginning, that we should look internally rather than externally. And also, I think the second thing that we could do is make sure that the grassroots are actually being funded directly. So institutionalizing that whole communal aspect, that whole Ubuntu aspect, making sure that every person is being actively involved in the decision-making processes and not necessarily just being there to show face or just be on camera or to be documented, but to actively participate in the change that we want to see.
Thank you for that. And Sego?
Thank you so much. So, like you said, we don't want to find ourselves here 5 years to come or in future to have the same conversation. So we can't prescribe solutions without acknowledging challenges that we face in Africa in terms of architecturizing the future that we want. So I would say that going back to the drawing board, the biggest challenge here is corruption. The reason why we have these endless conversations in terms of what we want to see to change, and we don't get to see that, it is corruption. So already what I've noticed is that there are terms and conditions, rules and laws. These are part of policies, right? These governs the countries, institutions, NPOs, funders, you name them. So we need 2 things here. We need to monitor and accountability, right? So in this case, when we monitor, we can get to say, this is what has come out of this round table discussion. Those are solutions. Then the monitoring part is a thing of, now we need a framework to say, after 6 months, this is how we monitor change. Now, accountability comes in to say, let's say now funders come into the table and say, for this solution to happen, we are therefore going to fund 100,000 Rand. Now, corruption comes somehow, invisibly or visibly, right? So those funds that are meant to do the good work on the ground gets to be stolen. Now, we need the word accountability. How do we make these people account? There should be a thing of taking harsh consequences against those that steal what is meant to bring solutions and transformation. So the accountability here, when I get to say consequences, harsh consequences, is the thing of they should pay back the money. And also the state should arrest these people to set an example to say, if you are a leader and you are appointed to serve people and somehow you become unethical, this is your reward. Now, those that are in the space for the good work or the goodwill, they should also be rewarded well. So it's a thing of the bad should be rewarded with being present and paying back all the money. The good ones should be at least be awarded with more remuneration or incentives or stipend to say thank you, we've seen your work. That also encourages and fuels somebody. And also they can also be given an opportunity to say, Teho, you have led here. For example, you have led in international relations space. Where do you want to be in? Then Teho says, I want to be in AU. And we say, okay, let's take you to AU. Now, how do we bring support? Now, this is now becoming progressive. We are able to see all of this in black and white to say, if I do good, this is my reward. And if I do bad, this is what I will get. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly bring in Himes Chen, if he's still here. I think at this moment, I would want to just hear from the floor, the participants that are here today. What are your thoughts on all this that we are discussing? What does the next architecture of philanthropy look like for you? And what changes do we need to really put in place? And to what extent can we be involving the young people? So please, if you have any thoughts, anything that has just touched your heart, your mind, your soul, just unmute yourself and speak through the mic. I'll just be looking through the few comments that have been thrown in. So I'm seeing from the chat, understanding the importance of archiving. If we see the value in our intangible cultural heritage, we can build these frameworks from a position of power. Thank you, Banji. I have my good friend here, Eshban. Any thoughts? What's going through your mind right now as you hear the young people speaking?
Thank you, Tarisa. You know, it's been very interesting just listening to this. And I'm going to draw on something that Antonio said much earlier on when he said that it's interesting how, you know, sometimes we go to the we go to the conversations, we go to the meetings, and we talk about African philanthropy and being more aid dependent. And then once the meeting is done, we go back to writing proposals to a thing that is foreign or a thing that is quote unquote international. And I've been thinking about like the vulnerability of all of us and how like fragile I think that our positions are if we rely on international money. But in that same context, there's also a narrative that is very present in these conversations where it's almost as though there is a very specific way in which we can become less aid dependent. And that specific way tends to be focused on things like, tends to be focused on a very specific shade or a very specific type of local fundraising. And I think that sometimes in those conversations, even though we say private sector, we sometimes shame people who talk about, and I use shame in inverted commas, we sometimes shame people who talk about social enterprises, especially if those people are from a civil society and human rights background. And we also shame people who talk about accumulating capital because of a very strong present anti-capitalist rhetoric within these circles. And the more I listen to these conversations, the more I feel like if we are going to be truly, if we're going to build African philanthropy for what it is and for what we're talking about and to be truly donor dependent, then all bets are off. I mean, like the way that we accomplish that dependence, that independence cannot be subject to the approval and the validation of the international aid system. And that whatever method that we choose for ourselves, we should not seek the validation of the international aid system. And I sometimes feel like when we talk about African philanthropy, there's a shade of it for which we don't want to offend the international system. And we forget that the international system built its capital through very complex ways of accomplishing capital. And I think that we need to stop shaming Africans who go down that path, because in shaming them, we are kicking away the ladder that other organizations or the international system has used to accomplish its own independence. This is the thought that's coming to me right now.
Thank you so much, Eshpan, for reminding us that we should not be apologetic and we should not seek validation. Whatever architecture we are building, whatever it looks like, it should be inherently African for Africans. We should not be importing any external models. Thank you so much. Eda, I know you are here, and I just had a quick question for you because I know Sivio is doing very great work in promoting philanthropy in Zimbabwe. How are you working with young people? If you were here from the onset, I think there was a thought around the engagement of youth at the onset of a program, or just them being invited to a workshop. Beyond that, there is no long-term or sustainable engagement. If you can just briefly reflect on that, I would appreciate. Eda. Sorry to put you on the spot, Eda.
Hi, Teresa. Sorry about that. Connection is a bit iffy. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so I was saying I know Sylvia is doing a great work in promoting philanthropy in Zimbabwe and beyond. And I was just keen to hear how you're also just working with the young people, because one of the thoughts that came out in the conversation is that young people, I just engaged for consultation, but beyond that, there's no sustainable or long-term engagement.
Sure. So one of the things that we've been working on is helping to support and strengthen the philanthropy ecosystem, especially for community foundations. And we've, supported and come in to help in the establishment of the Community Foundations Network of Zimbabwe. And one of the things that we've encouraged the members who are part of that network is one, we've seen, yes, local grassroots initiatives, philanthropic initiatives led by youth, so encouraging them to be part of this kind of like peer support group. I can think of an organization that's based in the eastern part of our country, which is called the Manicaland Youth Assembly, which has really benefited, one, not just in terms of guidance, input, insights from others in the space, but also bringing and sharing their stories, ensuring that youth are a critical element and feature for philanthropy and African philanthropy to grow. They're an entity that can't be ignored. The continent is getting younger and younger, and soon, just by demographics alone, youth will dominate the space. So, we've got initiatives and entities, or an initiative like that, but also just engaging in, research studies. So even when we've done studies in Zim looking at patterns of giving, it's then to kind of unpack and see as well from the element of youth, like what youth have been doing and promoting and providing a voice to amplify the important role that youth can play in philanthropy, its growth and strengthening of the ecosystem in our country and on the continent.
Thank you very much, Eda. I really love the emphasis that, the youth are the leaders of today, because Africa is really a young continent, and the efforts that Sivio is already putting to ensure that they are engaging the youth in a more sustainable manner. I hope the youth that are here, it's something that they are also just listening to and just taking forward. Celia, if you can share your final thoughts.
Okay. So when the different speakers are speaking, something just came to me. As we think about the future of architecture, the future architecture of philanthropy, I just wanted us to all remember that philanthropy is not new to Africa. It's not new.
Yeah.
Long before there were foundations, long before there were grant agreements, long before we started speaking about funding cycles, philanthropy was already part of our lives. I mean, it was a neighbor giving you salt because you don't have salt in your home. It was an auntie taking care of your baby because you need to go to the farm. You know, it was an uncle actually taking in a child because he probably lives in a city where there are job opportunities and your parents don't. You know, we are all beneficiaries of philanthropy. And maybe perhaps one mistake that we have made is allowing philanthropy to just become synonymous with funding. You know, every time you talk about philanthropy, your mind just, almost goes into money. Where are we getting the funds? Why can't we get funds from people within? It's in our core. It's about solidarity, and I love that it has been talked about here so much. It's about mutual responsibility. When we talk about let's start with what we have, let's all be responsible for one another. It's a belief that our well-being is connected to one another. So if we can at least reconnect that as Africans and reconnect modern philanthropy to be rooted in the values that we have constantly had as an African in the continent, because when you move from one country to another, you realize that our values are not so different. We have lived experiences that are so similar, yet so different because of the different contexts, but our values remain the same. So perhaps we need to reconnect modern philanthropy to go back to our values. And that will bring us together in terms of who is being involved, who is getting out. Even I loved, I think it was Shego who talked about the evaluation. When you're evaluating what funding has done, you know, are you going back to a community and checking, okay, what were the effects in the community? How did this community grow? Did we actually enrich their values, you know? So I think it would be good to just center back to our values as an African, as a community, as Africans, and bring back modern philanthropy, bring it to these values, and then recreate that architecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Banshi, what's burning? What's burning in your heart at the moment as we come to a close? Final thoughts? Banshi? Shego?
Well, I would say, you know, I'm going to quote the first Black president of South Africa, and that is the late Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. He said, "It seems impossible until it's done. These conversations can bring change. And if they are taken into high standard of consideration, years to come, we will be able to sit and say, you know, this is what happened when I was a speaker there, and this is what I said." And it's great to see that this is starting to be populated in other African countries. So I would tell young people that are here, do not give up. Keep knocking on those doors. Because at the end of the day, it is not about them, it's about you and the type of conversations that you're having with your cycle of influence. And never give up, make change. Like I said, it is doable. This is doable. Just be able to confront systematic failures. Be able to confront this. If it was built to oppress a Black person, we can be able to rise together and confront this and confront it forever, and we can be liberated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think what I've really taken from this conversation is that the future of philanthropy in Africa is not in the end about mobilizing resources. I think that has been emphasized by Celia, that when we hear philanthropy, then we immediately think about resources. It's also not about It is about redesigning relationships. I think you mentioned collaboration as a key ingredient, and it is also about the redistribution of power. The issue of power was really emphasized, especially in relation to young people. It is about strengthening accountability. I think a point around corruption was also really raised in terms of how we're supposed to speak against corruption. It was also just to promote transparency within our institutions and when we are engaging with our communities. It is about investing in local leadership. We have been told, we have heard that the youth, they do have the skills, the potential. They just need ongoing mentorship, and they're also ready to take up the different leadership positions. And most importantly, it is about ensuring that communities are not at the margins of philanthropy, but at the center of it. So the next architecture of philanthropy cannot simply be imported or inherited, something that Eshban has just emphasized. It must be imagined, designed, and built by Africans in partnership with communities and grounded in the realities and aspirations of the continent. I think this has really been key. And to the speakers, you have been awesome. And thank you so much. The participants who joined us this afternoon, this evening, we also really appreciate you. And to the team that organized this conversation, the last of its series, we really thank you, and we look forward to seeing more of these conversations. But just to point us towards what really happens after tonight, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are, I would want to call back again Tembi, just to give us a way forward and to just tell us what happens next. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Tarisai. Thank you, Siobo there and Chokopato and all the discussants who joined us and everyone in the room. I think you've all left me and the team with a lot. We curated this series because we didn't want to go in blind. We didn't want to start implementing projects and initiatives from a blinded perspective or from our own. We wanted to hear as many voices as possible. This has actually been a consultation more than it has been just a weekly roundtable series. And so thank you to all of you for giving us freely your knowledge, for giving your knowledge freely and helping us carve this out. And so what's coming next? This is all feeding into a policy brief. But more than anything, we've realized from the past, well, now I can say 8 sessions, that we actually need to projectize this and turn it into action and create a policy advocacy project from all of this. And so please be on the lookout for that one. If you want to participate, if you want to be a part of it, DM us, email us. We are happy to include you. We're happy to include any insights and inputs on how we can better design this beyond everything that everyone has said over the past 8 weeks. This is our thing. We are embedding solidarity into the next architecture that we are building. And so we welcome everyone to chip in. And the other thing that I'm super excited about, that we're all super excited about, is our upcoming festival in October called the Generation Give Festival. It's going to be the very first one, the first platform we are creating in person to bring young people across the continent together who are givers, who are giving in one way or another, not just financially, but through their time, through their knowledge, and through all the other aspects of giving that we have in African philanthropy. Coming together into one space to connect, to co-create, and to be celebrated. We're going to do a lot of celebration also in the room. And so we welcome all of you to please do register. I think registration information will be out by the end of this month. Do join us, do come through. Even if you're not young, forever young at heart, we're not closing out the space to anyone. And we will have a lot of other campaigns happening throughout the year and initiatives that might just pop up. engage with us, DM us where necessary. If you need our emails, we are always happy to give them, and our phone numbers. And so from me, from myself, and the rest of the AYPN team, thank you so much, Siyabonga, for joining us. It's a wrap. I can finally say it's a wrap after 8 sessions. Thank you. And have a lovely one. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tembi.